Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar. There's a guy in the YouTube comments that does like blue shirt polo analysis. And I'm wearing the Best Buy blue today because honestly, ladies and gentlemen, times be tough. I did go to the Best Buy. I wasn't working there, but I did see the amount of metric nonsense that some Best Buy employees got to deal with, okay? And, I'll be real with you. If I could tip a retail worker, I probably would after what I've seen. But, ladies and gentlemen, to give you an idea, the Nintendo Switch 2 was actually available for pre-order today, okay? So much like the end of the world or that giant moon hitting you in Majora's Mask, this was the point where everybody could go and purchase one of the most beloved systems on the planet. Now, apparently, there's been so much pre-orders going on, at least in Japan, that apparently Nintendo is overwhelmed. So according to good old-fashioned Nintendo, who basically allowed everyone to apply to pre-ordering a Nintendo Switch 2, ended up getting, at least in Japan, 2.2 million pre-order applications in just Japan alone, okay? So again, to give you an idea, their president goes, far exceeds our expectations and far exceeds the number of Switch 2 consoles that can be delivered from the My Nintendo store on June 5th. Yeah, I have actually never actually seen like this amount of sales happening for a system. Like, back when the PS5 and the Xbox Series X dropped, yeah, we complained about scalpers and everything, but that was a time when like you had COVID, you had supply chain stuff. But typically speaking, even then I was able to kind of see the pre-order screen work. I will say, if you woke up this morning and you decided to be really up in the AM, you go to bestbuy.com, you were greeted with one of these screens that made you wait like 30 minutes 20 to 30 minutes to access their webpage because they were getting flooded with requests upon requests. GameStop, you had to look at like a 4-hour queue, dude. And even then, it still didn't work. You go to Amazon.ca and you're wondering, where do I get that Switch 2? Well, according to this situation, ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't even able to get a Switch 2, or I wasn't even able to find a Switch 2 here. Because surprisingly, within the hour that everything happened, it was all sold out. It was crazy. It was insane to see. Again, some of these are only available via invitation, meaning that they're going through several layers upon several layers to prevent the dreaded scalper from getting access to it. What if the man says, go to Walmart, one would say. Well, if you go to the Walmart section and you try to pre-order any of these systems, you'll find out they are currently out of stock. And this all happened literally within the hour, okay? So again, I wasn't somebody that was going out of my way to get these systems. For me, I'm actually waiting until these probably come more into stock. There's nothing really on the Switch 2 that excites me to the point where I'm going to go out and spend $700 day one just to play something like Mario Kart. Wasn't really something I was hyped for. So down the road, when like a Zelda comes out, or like a good Pokemon game comes out, or a Mario game comes out, I'll probably end up picking the thing down the road, okay? But for now, if I'm going to spend $700 on something, it might as well be an AMD GPU that I can put in the Muda box down in my basement, okay? Because I play a hell of a lot more games there than I do here. I mean, it's crazy. You got people lining up for the good old GameStops over here. I mean, the lineups look kind of wild. It reminds me of like back in the day waiting for Halo Reach, Gears of War, seeing people lined up just to get a chance at pre-ordering a video game console. And yeah, you got a bunch of people lined up, ready to go, pick up their system. And if you look at some of these stores, obviously they were basically saying that they had like probably 20 systems like base, up to like 43 systems if you wanted to get the Mario Kart bundle. So they actually had stuff there. It's just the demand is fucking insane. So, it makes me kind of wonder, like, boy, all the complaints that I really did see about the prices, while I think there's merit to it, it really shows me how the internet is this like really loud but almost inconsequential machine in the grand scheme of things, okay? Whether you go on any social media, whether it be YouTube, X, Facebook, Daily Motion, whatever the fuck it is, you'll probably find out that, yeah, we just scream really loudly. But in the grand scheme of things, the average gamer is out there picking up so many Switches that they might be setting a goddamn industry record, which, if you take away all your fanboyism, it's probably one of the coolest things to see. Now, of course, because of all of this pre-order nonsense and all of this being gone, you can start to see that, yes, the scalpers did get through. So I decided to go to ebay.ca, and unfortunately, there were scumbags who are selling a Nintendo Switch 2 confirmed pre-sale. The UK version was gonna cast Wingardium Leviosa for 1,000 fucking Canadian dollars? Boy, you. Just to give you an idea, the base price probably is $700 after tax. So you're adding this extra markup. Now, one thing that I do really like to see about the situation as well too is just to make sure that some of these people are actually legit resellers. So for instance, this person's actually selling the stuff for sure. Like they confirmed it. They're going to ship it a few days after release. You know, it's really wild. Pre-sale confirmed. Mario Nintendo Switch 2 for $2,000 US, equivalent to $2,776. Man, you have to be a brain dead asshole to buy that, or you just have to have way too much money. And if you get robbed, I honestly wouldn't feel that bad. Now, recently, I did notice some pretty cool things that have happened since the NVIDIA 50 series launch. For instance, there have been some scumbags who have come out and pretty much, well, not scumbags, I would say saints in this situation, who have come out and basically put $1,000 like resales up and effectively said, these are pre-order screenshots. Please note, you're ordering a picture of the Nintendo Switch 2. This listing is to combat bots and scalpers. No refunds, no cancels. You'll receive a PNG image of a Switch 2. I mean, it's kind of cool. You're buying a fucking NFT effectively on eBay. And, you know, honestly, I hope this goes through. I hope eBay doesn't reverse it. If you're the type of scumbag to just buy from a scalper at the end of the day and contribute to the problem that I think is really killing that fun video game, like day one purchase side of me, yeah, I don't really care. I mean, but in general, there's so many scalpers for this that it's unfortunately sad to see, okay? It really is just a sad situation. It really seems like with all the actual, I feel like at some point we're gonna need to start giving like blood samples in order to combat botting and scalping. But yeah, it is what it is. And unfortunately, it's a part of like, you know, buying a video game system that I don't think you may never be able to avoid. Now, one of the things with the Switch 2 that I've kind of unfortunately seen, my only issue with this, and one of the reasons I'm not getting it, is coincidentally because of one of the actual things they've released, the controversial thing that they've pushed, which is the Switch 2 game keycard. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are like, but Muda, you gotta grow up, old man, okay? The world is going exceedingly digital, all right? Why are you holding on to your physical copies? Because it's all I have, okay? It's important to me. And I want to stress really quickly, this game keycard shit is not brand new. There's a lot of games that came out on the original Nintendo Switch and also on PlayStations and Xboxes that are incomplete physical copies. Meaning that for an industry that likes to preach so much shit about carbon neutrality and all this nonsense, they sure love printing physical copies that are eventually going to be the finest fucking e-waste anybody can imagine. No, this is a situation where I've always voted with my wallet. I'm somebody that has a pretty extensive Nintendo Switch physical collection, and for a long time before I actually really played on my my Steam Deck pretty exclusively, I used to be a pretty big Nintendo Switch player. In fact, I actually went from playing on the PS4 as my primary console of choice to effectively playing for the last 2 years before this actually dropped, exclusively on my Nintendo Switch. I would just buy multi-platform games on my Switch, knowing full well they didn't look as good as my PS4 or PC, but the fact that I could play a video game in my bed hooked up to a TV and then take with me portably is pretty much all I needed. So ever since I got the Steam Deck, like this is pretty much the only reason I was interested in this is because I loved playing on the Nintendo Switch, right? Now that's the only reason I would get the Switch 2 is because if it's better and stronger than this and the physical copies were all there, I'd be so on point for it. But to give you an idea, the Nintendo Switch, the original, had game key cards, right? Unfortunately, games like Doom Eternal, games like Wolfenstein 2, games like L.A. Noire did not ship on a complete cartridge. You put the cartridge in, you downloaded the rest of the game, and that's how it works. Now, the problem here, for anybody that's not picking up what I'm putting down, is from a preservation perspective, if down the road servers go down for any system, which they do, whether it be 10 years, maybe even 20 years if you're really lucky, those cards become useless. You can stick a card in, and if you can't download the rest of the game anymore because the server isn't available, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a bad time. And if you're not willing to vote with your wallet now, we may reach a future where most physical media effectively is just a license code on a disc, quite literally, meaning that the industry is shifting to digital, meaning that a lot of that sharing that we do isn't going to be there. A lot of the ownership of the game that we do isn't going to be there, because you'll always need to be connected, or at least licensed periodically, from a digital server online. Now, unfortunately, with the Switch 2, it really feels like a lot of big games are really getting comfortable with the game keycard shit. For instance, this would be the only reason I would have even attempted pre-ordering a Switch 2, which would be Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. For anybody that has no idea what Yakuza 0 is, it's one of my favorite video games ever made, okay? It's probably one of the best action-adventure games you can have, one of the best Yakuza games, and it's one of those games where if you want to talk about hundreds of hours of content for like literally a fraction of the, like if you want to talk about dollars for hours gaming, the Yakuza franchise is where it's at. You could buy any single one of these games and get yourself hundreds of hours for literally like whatever the price tag may be. For $70, this game is actually a steal. It comes with extra content, a redub. It's Yakuza 0, one of my favorite games. I mean, I love how much content is in this game. And unfortunately, with Sega, they've been so good with physical media when it comes to PlayStation. I bought pretty much every single Sega Yakuza-esque game, whether it be Judgment, Yakuza, the spin-offs, digitally as much as I can, or physically as much as I can. The only game I ever bought digital was maybe the Leica Gaiden Agent game, which they didn't physically release here. So they've always been really good with releasing full physical media. Unfortunately, it seems they're in the game keycard world, meaning that this game is not a completed title on the disc, when it easily could be, ladies and gentlemen. Are you Capcom and are you buying Street Fighter 6? I bought this game physically because it was a cool open world single player fighting game. The fact that it's also a game keycard is just saddening. Again, anytime you see this white strip, it's one of those games where you may as well just consider purchasing this digitally, right? In my opinion, at least, just for the convenience. I know people say that I can share this with my friends, which is cool, or I can resell this, which in reality, are you really going to be reselling this to somebody that's interested in physical media? Because anytime I see that white strip or that download required, I literally just don't download games. Like, this does not appeal to anybody in the market. If somebody who wants the convenience of digital games will just buy the game digitally, so they never have to switch cards in the first place. Now, unfortunately, looking further into a lot of this, most of these big games, or at least a lot of the launch stuff, seems to be game keycard. So Suikoden 1 and 2, again, an HD remaster of like what, a game from Super Nintendo? Yeah, it's all game keycard. Dynasty Warriors, game keycard. You want to go down to games like Wild Heart, game keycard. A 3DS remake of Bravery Default, that's a game keycard. Sonic and Shadow Generations. Bro, we can't even stick a a PS3 game into it, come on. And then of course you've got games like Puyo Puyo Tetris. I mean, if Tetris cannot fit onto a full Switch cartridge, we've got some problems in the optimization department. Now, I always think voting with your wallet is the most important thing you can do. The best way to combat shit like this is when any publisher releases these kind of physical products, I would go as far as to say this is not only a scam, but also, if you can, buy games that are completed. Games like Cyberpunk 2077, surprisingly, compared to all of this other stuff, is actually giving you a full cartridge on release, which I think is a super awesome fucking consumer-respecting thing to do. And honestly, when you look at the history of Switch stuff, there's so many games that literally do come entirely on cart. You know, I played through all of Dragon Quest on a cartridge, and again, this is probably one of the best ways to, in my opinion, play this game on a Switch, completely cozied up in your bed. You know, playing games like Final Fantasy, Zodiac Age, again, one of the best ways to play this really long RPG with 4x speed on a fucking Nintendo Switch in the comfort of your own hand. Playing something like Danganronpa, okay? A 4-game collection, all conveniently on one actual cartridge. And of course, you know, you even got indie games like Signalis, which is probably one of my favorite, like, survival horror-esque video games that has come out recently. Again, I bought this Japanese version because it was a physical release completely on the cartridge. And again, you know, it's not even just Nintendo. There's also, you know, publishers, the people behind Baldur's Gate 3 that released two discs with the entire game completely there. so we didn't need to rely on broken physical releases and download copies. I know that I'm kind of like screaming into the void, or maybe I am overly repetitive on this topic, but I really feel like this is my only issue with the system. I think overall the Switch 2 is kind of a cool product. I think it's, if anything, it's just more of the Switch 1, which I liked as a system anyways. Needed an update, and it seems like it got an update. It seems like it's going to be a pretty banging good time. Seems like the power is there, especially for a handheld. I'm not going to be somebody that's typically playing the game online or the system online, so I don't really care about the Nintendo Switch memberships or any of that stuff. I think the price they're asking for the power they're providing is not so bad. I don't necessarily like the increases in game prices, but I'm hoping that's not across the board. I'm hoping maybe it's just Nintendo with the bug up their ass, but could be entirely wrong on that. Video games are just getting more expensive. But overall, if I had one serious, real issue with this system, it has to do with the games that we're purchasing and owning, right? Because I feel like these cartridges, how Nintendo has released them, right? A lot of these companies are going with game key cards because I'm pretty sure it's just way cheaper for them in the long run, right? Like down the road, if you had the choice between, let's say, paying an extra few dollars to release on a higher capacity cartridge versus Nintendo literally allowing you to save those bucks, which really add up for distribution, just by releasing on a competent cartridge and selling it out there for the world, obviously every company that's interested in a dime is going to go with the cheapest option. And that cheapest option is by no way beneficial to you. So maybe Nintendo can maybe force some of these companies to not use the game key cards as much. Maybe Nintendo kind of needs it to exist just because they've pigeonholed themselves into the cartridge meta, and cartridges are inherently more expensive to make than just raw Blu-rays. So yeah, ultimately it's... Switch 2 is a wild, wild scenario. It's positive in the sense that it's going to be one of the biggest releases ever. But unfortunately, I think Switch is probably going to be further heralding the situation where we just own less and less of our games. And that is the only issue that I'm not comfy with. But anyways, I've ranted too long, too much, and hopefully tomorrow we'll be looking at some creepy shit. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it, I am out.